Okay, in number 1, on level ground, a vertical rod 12 feet. So we have a vertical rod 12 feet, and it casts a shadow 4 feet long. So we have a shadow 4 feet long. And at the same time, a nearby vertical flagpole casts a shadow of 12 feet long. So we don't know how tall, but we also know that it casts a shadow of 12 feet long. And how many feet tall is the flagpole? So we need to know this. So this can be solved with proportions. We can say from the first part, 12 is to 4, and here we don't know the height, but we know that shadow. And it helps that it says at the same time, so that won't be changing anything. And from here we can reduce this down. 12 over 4 is 3. So 3 equals x over 12. And you can either use your answer choices and say, well, what could I plug in for x, which of these numbers, and say divide that by 12 and get 3. And we should see that it's e. Or you can multiply both sides by 12 and finish solving this equation, and you get 36 is equal to x. So the right answer choice would be E. Okay, moving on to our next problem. This looks like it's going to be an average problem. And remember, when you find the average, you add up all of your test scores and divide by how many you're given. And so this person has earned an 85, a 95, a 93, and an 80. On 4 tests, each worth 100 points. So, given so far this term, how many points must he earn on the 5th test? So, I'm going to add a 5th test. I don't know what that is. So, and it is also out of 100 points to average 90 for the 5 tests. So, in other words, after I add all these up and divide by how many I have, which is going to be 5, I want that average to be a 90. Okay, so we can do some algebra here. We will need to multiply 5 over. And if we add up all of our test scores, that should be 353. Plus that missing test score is going to be equal to 450, because I would multiply this 5 over. And then, of course, add those known values. So here, again, we would subtract 353 to the other side, so x would be 97. So that would be what he would need to make on that 5th test to average a 90. Okay, moving on to number 3. If x equals -5, then what are we going to get for this expression? So really, this is a calculator problem, really good calculator problem. If you plug in -5 squared, now make sure when you type this in your calculator, you use parentheses. Without parentheses, this negative is not going to be included, and we need it included because that's what x is equal to. So let's see, we would get positive 25 minus 1 over -4, so I should get a value of -6. Okay, moving on to the next. Here, let's see, we have a person who's ran 1 2/5 miles on Monday and 2 1/3 miles on Tuesday. What was the total distance in miles? So this is adding our fractions. So we have 1 2/5 plus 2 1/3. Now, you do have to get a common denominator here, so let's separate this and talk about our fractions. A common denominator for 5 and 3 would be 15. And so we would say, well, what did I multiply to 5 to get 15? I multiplied by 3, so I have to multiply up here by 3. So that's 6 over 15. And the same process down here, I multiplied by a 5, so I need to multiply the top by a 5. And so it looks like we get 3 and 11/15. And yeah, you can type that in your calculator or just do it this way. Sometimes it's faster just to do these type of problems by hand. Okay, number 5, strange problem. It's not much of an algebra problem, it's a reasoning problem. Consider all 3 statements below to be true. All insects that are attracted to honey are ants. Okay, and let's see, insect I is not an ant. Insect J is attracted to honey. And so as we go through, let's see, if insect I is not an ant, then it's not attracted to honey. Well, sure, that's what it says up there. I is an ant attracted to honey. Well, all right. Let's see, which of the following statements is necessarily true, has to be true. Well, we don't know that for sure. It could be, but here is just saying it's not an ant. So we here, no, not necessarily. And again, not necessarily for C. So it looks like the only one, if these 3 statements are true, E would have to be the only one that's true, because insect J is attracted to honey, and all insects that are attracted to honey are ants. So that would have to be choice E. Okay, moving on to number 6. So here it's a matter of substitution. We're told that, let's see, M is -16 and X is -1. So we're going to see, what is this expression equal to then? So I'm going to have -16 over, let's see, -1 minus 3. So that's going to be the square root of -16 divided by -4, which is really the square root of +4. So that's going to give us answer choice G. And they were trying to trick us with these negatives under the radical. They're trying to get us to choose one of these answer choices, but notice that negative did cancel out. Okay, so moving on to number 7. We have tickets for a community theater production cost $6 each when bought in advance and $8 when bought at the door. The theater's group's goal is at least, so they can make more, but the goal is at least $2,000. So we can have more, but that's the smallest we want for our goal. The theater group sold 142 opening night tickets in advance. What would be the minimum number of tickets they need to sell at the door opening night to make their goal? So we know they've already sold 142 opening night, so that's going to be in advance, and that's $6. And plus however many more they sell at the door, which is $8 each. Now that has to be at least. Now we can have more. So if we can have more, then this can be bigger than or equal to $2,000. So there's your setup. If you multiply 142 times $6, that's $852 plus, and you've got, let's see, $8 times X, and that has to be greater than or equal to 2,000. And subtract 852 over and divide by 8, or you can take your answer choices at this point and start substituting in. And we see that X has to be greater than or equal to $143.50. So that's going to be answer choice B. Number 8. And number 8 looks like it's going to be a fundamental counting principle, and that just means you take all of your different choices and you multiply them together. So let's look at all of our different choices that we have. We have 5 kinds of meat, we have 3 kinds of bread, and 3 kinds of cheese. So if we're wanting just 1 bread, 1 meat, 1 cheese, you always just multiply these together. So that's going to give us 45 choices. And again, that's just your fundamental counting principle. Okay, here we have some algebra. We're going to have to go through our distributive property. So 12 times x minus 11, that means 12 needs to be multiplied to x. And 12 needs to be multiplied to 11, and that's going to be 132 equals negative 15. We will add 132 over, so I have 12x will be equal to positive 117. And if we divide both sides by 12, we have x equals 117 over 12, and that should reduce. We can divide the top and bottom by a 3, so it looks like we're going to get answer choice E. Number 10. Here in the figure below, we have a triangle, and we see that A, D, C, and E are collinear. AD, BD, and BC are all of the same length, so we have all those nice little tick marks there. And so we want to know what is the degree of measure BCE. So I need to know the measure of this angle here. Well, notice we do have an isosceles triangle here and here. So let's see. If this angle is 25 up here, we have an isosceles. This angle down here is 25. We know the total sum has to be 180, so that's going to give me 130 degrees here. Well, again, the measure of this angle here will be the exact value that I need over here. So my answer is going to be 130. Now, if we didn't want to, or we didn't remember that geometry property, what we could do here is continuing going through our process, and we know that if that particular angle here is 130, then I know this angle is 50. And since this is an isosceles triangle, this angle is 50. So that would make this angle here 130. So that's why the geometry property just says this angle measure here is equal to this measure out here. So you have 130 degrees. Number 11 is another substitution problem. Anytime you see this notation here, that just means everywhere you see an x, you're going to plug in that value. So f at negative 2, that's going to be 9 times negative 2 all squared. And again, you need those parentheses. And do type this straight into your calculator, but don't jack it up. You have to make sure you put those parentheses there. So f at negative 2, let's see, that's going to be positive 4. 4 times 9 most days is 36, minus 10, minus 8. And when you put all that together, it looks like you're going to get 18. So you have answer choice C. Okay, let's see. Next problem, least common multiple. So the least common multiple is just like a least common denominator. That least common multiple, and used to back in elementary school, you had to list out all those and you found which one was equal. But keep in mind, your least common multiple can't be any smaller than this biggest number you're looking at. So the least common multiple has to be 70 or greater. Well, if that's the case, well, we can get rid of those two. And now let's think about this. Will 70 divide into 120 an even amount of times? Well, no, 30 and 20 will, but 70 won't, so it can't be that one. Now let's look at 420. Well, I know 420 is divisible by 7. That'll go 6. So then we check again. Well, 420, is that divisible by 30? Sure it is. What about divisible by 20? Yep, it sure is. So we see that my answer choice is J. While doing a problem on his calculator, Tom meant to divide a number by 2. So that was his goal. He wanted to divide by 2, but instead he accidentally multiplied by 2. Which of the following calculations could Tom then do to the result on the calculator screen to obtain the result he originally wanted? So his goal, he wanted to divide by 2, but instead he multiplied by 2. So to undo that operation there, he would need to divide by 2, and that gets him back to the original, and then he can go back and do what he originally wanted to, which is divide by 2 again. So that's really in one operation. He needs to divide by 4. Number 14, the eight-sided figure is divided into 5 congruent squares. So 5 congruent squares means that they're all equal. The total area of the 5 squares is 125. So that means if the total area is 125, that means 5 squares. And to find the area of a square, it's side squared. So that total area is 125. So we can find a side length here if we divide by 5. So we know that that side squared is 25. So one side is 5. Now it wants to know what is the perimeter in inches of the figure. So we need to go through and count out, well, how many squares do I actually have here? How many sides? Because with the perimeter, you're adding up all the different sides. So we would have a 5 here and a 5 here, 5 here, here. So we have to be careful with this and make sure we get all of these sides, and especially inside here. So if we count up how many we have, let's see, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I have 12 sides that measure 5 each. So that's going to give me a perimeter of 60. So answer choice G. Number 15, we have someone that has $100 available to buy some USB drives. And each drive has a price of $8 and a 7% sale tax. So what is the maximum number of USB drives that this person can buy? So let's see how much we would actually have for each one. So we have $8, but we also have a 7% sale tax, so 0.07. So he has to pay 56 cents in tax. So the total price for a drive is $8.56. And he has a total of $100. So we can very quickly in our calculators do 100 divided by $8.56. And that's going to give us $11.68. And so it looks like he can purchase a maximum amount of 11. Number 16, a certain computer performs 1.5 times 10 to the 8th calculations per second. And how many seconds would it take the computer to perform 6.0 times 10 to the 16 calculations? So let's see, we need to take, if they can do this many calculations per second, and I have this many calculations, so we need to divide. So we're going to have 6.0 times 10 to the 16th, and I'm dividing that by 1.5 times 10 to the 8th. Now here, this is something I wouldn't bother with all of this. I would focus on these exponents right here, because you are dividing with like bases. So really to find your answer, what is 16 minus 8? Well, that has an exponent of 8, isn't it? So you're looking for the 10 that has the exponent of 8, and that's going to be answer choice J. Number 17, we are looking for the equation that matches this line. Very quickly, we need to review y equals mx plus b. That m is your slope. That's your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, b, this is where that line crosses the y-axis. So in this form, I automatically know where the line crosses the y-axis. And if we look at this line here, we see that we are crossing the y-axis between 4 and 6. So I'm looking for a number that's between 4 and 6. So let's look at our equations. A, since we don't have anything written out here, is plus 0. Same is true here, plus 0. And let's look, that would mean my line crosses at 2. It doesn't cross at 2. This means it crosses at -5. It doesn't cross at -5. So let's look here at +5. Yep, that's somewhere between 4 and 6, so my answer is E. Number 18. A square is circumscribed about a circle of 7-foot radius shown. What is the area of the square in square feet? So the area of a square is going to be side squared. And if my radius is 7, now they try to draw this to trick us, but this would also be a radius of 7. Well, look, that's the same length as the side. And if we continue that, 7 over here, so I know that entire side is 14. So 7 plus 7, 14. So the area is going to be 14 squared, and that's going to have to be answer choice K. 19. 2 workers were hired to begin work at the same time. Worker A contract called for a starting salary of $20,000. And let's see, gotta get my marker back up here. Called for $20,000 with an increase of $800 after each year of employment. So automatically we know what worker A is going to be. We're starting out, they have $20,000 plus $800 after each year of employment. So if we let X be each year of employment, we have this. So let's see, what else have we got? Worker B's contract starts for $15,200 plus an increase of $2,000, my gracious, after each year of employment. And which of the following equations could be solved to determine the number of years until B's yearly average equals A's? So let's see which one has these two salaries set equal to each other. And it looks like they made it easy for us. It's going to be answer choice A. So number 20, right? How many feet is the highest point of the ramp? Highest point on the ramp. So that's really talking about this side here, isn't it? We need to find the measure of that side. So if we're going to do that, we do have Pythagorean triples. That's 5, 12, 13. And if we know that, we automatically know answer choice J. But if we don't know that, we have to remember the Pythagorean Theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b, it doesn't matter, but this side over here across from that right angle, that's always going to be c. So we have 12 squared plus b squared equals 13 squared. So we have 144 plus b squared equals 169. And so here we have b squared equals 25. And if we take the square root, b is 5. On number 21, when we're simplifying expressions like this and trying to save ourselves some time, notice all of the x values are the same. So I wouldn't concern myself with the terms that have the x's in it. I would concern myself with all of these last numbers, which is going to come from saying 7 times 3, which is going to give me 21. And -3 times -2 is +6, so that's a value of 27. So there's answer choice E. The next one, number 22, if 115% of a number is 460, what is 75% of the number? Now, doing this, I always use the formula is over of equals percent over 100. Now, there's several different ways to do this, and if you have your own way, wonderful. But here I just go and straight plug in. We see is 460. Of, we don't know what that is, of a number, so that's x. And my percent was 115 over 100. And we can cross multiply, so we would have 115x equals 46,000. And if we divide, we see that x is going to be 400. And so now we need 75% of 400. So 0.75 times 400. And once we type that in our calculators, we would end up with 300. So my correct answer is G. Okay, and now for 23, we have, when this is written out, we need the sum of our coefficients here. So we need to remember, when we square this, don't just square the first number and the second number. You have to write this out side by side, and you fill this out. Now, another way to remember this would be, if you want to keep this shorter and try to learn a quick way, you do square the first term and you can square the last term. So that's going to give me 4x squared plus 9. But then the other part is you multiply 2x and negative 3 and double it. Well, if I multiply those two, I get negative 6, and negative 6 doubled is negative 12. So that's a quick way. The other way would be our first, outer, inner, and last. So either way you want to do that. But now we need the sum of the coefficients. So we're going to have 4 plus 9 minus 12. And so that looks like that's going to give us 1. Moving on to 24. Now 24, we want to know what is the area in square feet of the figure below. So we're going to have to divide this up to get some of these values. I would divide up, it doesn't matter how you divide this. I always would just divide it here and extend that line, because then I know this is going to be a 15 by 15. So first of all, 15 by 15, that's going to be 225. And so automatically I know it's not those two, because my value has to be bigger than 225. But now I need to find out this part over here, which is going to be 5 times this segment. Well, if I know all of this is 25 and I know this much is 15, then this remaining part has to be 10. So that's going to give me 50. So 225 and 50 is going to give me 275. Number 25, let's see, now this one I think is going to be a little tricky, because you've got to have different units, and so really to make this problem a little bit better, you might need to do some conversions here. And so let's remember that there's 12 inches in a foot, so that's going to help. 12 inches is 1 foot. So we need to see how much area we're dealing with. So we will need to convert 8 feet and 10 feet to inches, because our brick is measured in inches. So 8 feet, that's going to be 96 inches. If we want that area by 10 feet, which is going to be 120 inches, so that's going to give me 11,520 inches squared. And now we need to divide it by how many, or the measurement of the brick, to get really how much we have going on here. Now, some people may ask, well, what about the 2? But this was really giving us all the different sides, but we don't need how tall that brick was. We just need the length and the width of the brick. And so here we go ahead and we need to divide those. So 11,520 divided by 32, that's going to give us 360. So now we have our answer. So be careful, make sure you know those conversions. All right, and so we're looking for the slope of a line here. Some old equations or formulas that we used to have, we would have AX plus BY equals C. And if we wanted to know the slope, given here, well, the slope is going to be negative a over b. Your slope is sitting right here, and you do a sign change. So a is the coefficient of x, and we need to change its sign. So if I change that sign right here, I have 14 over 6. And if we reduce that, we end up with 7/3. So my answer is H. Number 27, these problems always tend to confuse people. We have two numbers, m and n, and they have to be positive integers, and such that m is less than n. And notice that we're talking about some compound inequalities here. And notice we'll have to do the square root. So the first thing I would do is try to find m and m so that when I multiply them together, I get something I can take the square root of. So I would choose 16, and we have 2 and 8. So I would let m be 2 and 8 be n. So let's go through and plug in and see what we get. So again, m is 2 and 8 is n. So we have 0 for a. 0 is less than the square root of 16, which is less than 2. Well, the square root of 16 is 4, so that's not going to work. So we know it's not this one. Well, b just changes this 0 to a 1. That's still not going to be true. And let's check out c. So m, which is 2, is less than 4 is less than n, and n is 8. That one's true, so there's my answer. And again, I didn't have to choose 16. I could have chosen any two numbers, but I chose 16 because I can take the square root of 16 and compare 8 and 2 very quickly. All right, number 28. This one, we have two similar triangles, and they are set up in ratios of 3 to 5. The sides of the smaller triangle measure 3, 5, and 7. What is the perimeter in centimeters of the larger? So really, what we can do is set up some kind of ratio here. So if it's 3 to 5, I know here 3 to 5 is equal to, and then we would take this side and say 3 over x, and we would solve, and so we cross multiply. We have 3x equals 15. So we have x to be 15 over 3. And so we set up again. We keep going through this process. So again, 3 to 5 equals 5 to x. And so I have 3x equals 25. So this side is 25 over 3. And then let's do one more side. So I have 3 to 5 again is equal to 7 over x. And here I have 3x equals 35. And so x equals 35 over 3. And so there's my side lengths, and I can just add these all up. And I left them over 3, so they all have a common denominator. So we would say 15 over 3 plus 25 over 3 plus 35 over 3. And so let's see, what is that going to give us? I believe, let's see, 15 and 25, that's 40 and 35, 75 over 3, which is going to give us 25. So answer choice J. Okay, number 29. Number 29, we have two people playing darts. The radius of the outside circle is 10. Okay, so the radius of the outside is 10. And each of the other circles has a radius that is 2 inches smaller than the larger circle. All the circles have the same center. Thomas has only one dart left to throw, and he needs at least 30 points. Now, he can have more than 30 points, but he needs at least 30 points to win the game. Assuming that his last dart hits at a random point within the single region on the board, what is the percent chance that Thomas will win the game? So he needs at least 30 points. So let's look. If we're starting here and going out, so I know the length, this outside is 10. So 8, 6, 4, and 2. Now he needs at least 30 points. He needs at least 30 points. So if he does here, if he hits right here at that 6, that would be at least 30 points. So goodness, at least 30. So that's going to give me 36. If we find the area here, then we're going to get all that he needs. That's going to give us more, or right there at what he at least needs. So 6, the area of that is going to be, and remember the area is pi r squared. So the area of where our points to win, either 30, 40, or 50, at least 30, so any of those, that area is going to be 36 pi. Now, we're looking for the percent chance. So percent chance is going to be 36 out of the total amount. Well, what is the total area? Well, if we look at that, then we know that the radius is 10. So the total area here is going to be 100 pi. So the percent chance of winning, and that's going to be 36 pi over 100 pi. So 36 pi over 100 pi, that's going to give us 36%. So that's going to be answer choice A. And number 30. Number 30, let's see. When asked his age, the algebra teacher said, if you square my age, so I don't know what his age is. I'm going to write A. So if you square my age, then subtract 23 times my age, the result is 50. So how old is he? Well, here you could go plug in your answer choices. You can certainly do that. You can even factor this and say A times A minus 23 has to be 50. And look at your answer choices. Oh, I got to write my 0 there. So if I plug in 23, that's going to give me 0. So it can't be F. If I plug in 25, would that do? So that's going to be 25 times 2. Oh, that works. So it's going to be answer choice G.